Bowl champions, Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you. Let the celebration begin.
We both kind of figured this might be the end for Zach Ertz, and it certainly seemed like it on Monday.
Yeah, he got very emotional, reflecting on his 8 seasons with the Eagles. Man, he's had some highs and some lows. The ultimate highs, game-winning catch in a Super Bowl, and obviously this year didn't go the way anybody hoped or he hoped. But it was very emotional, reflective. Zach Ertz, who sure sounded like a farewell to Philadelphia today.
Sports bettors, are you ready? Are you ready for a faster way to win? When you bet with PointsBet, you get faster bets, faster withdrawals, and faster rewards at your fingertips. All on an easy-to-use app. See for yourself why bettors are calling PointsBet innovative, lightning quick, and the reason they have ditched other books. Experience this premium sportsbook for yourself and sign up with the code NBCPOD100 to get $100 in free bets when you deposit $20. That's $100 on your first $20 deposit. So, are you ready? Terms and conditions apply. Void where prohibited. Must be 21 years or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
It did. This is Eagle Eye Podcast with Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. We'll talk a little bit more about Zach Ertz, that situation. We had a lengthy Zoom call with Howie Roseman and Doug Peterson on Monday, the day after the 2020 season ended. So we will go through some of that, a lot to get to there. And Carson Wentz didn't speak to reporters on Monday. I don't know if he will at some point. I kind of doubt it. We'll go through what that means in the context of the report and his future here in Philadelphia. And maybe we'll talk about Jalen Hurts just a little bit too. But yeah, Zach Ertz, it kind of tugs at your heartstrings a little bit. I mean, you've been around this a lot longer than me, but I've been around for a little while too. And it's you don't really get emotional often, but that was even tough to watch because this is a situation where I think Zach Ertz would like to be here. I mean, he doesn't want to leave Philadelphia, but he's also smart enough to realize the situation. And the situation is that he's probably not going to be here next year.
Yeah, and, he's an emotional guy anyway. He wears his heart on his sleeve, and we've seen it before. We've seen him get emotional before, talking about different things. And, he's been clear about that he wanted to spend his whole career in Philadelphia. I mean, his mom just moved here and, bought a place. And, this is home for him. He's got his charity here. And he's really kind of interwoven with the community and does a lot of good stuff. So it's hard to build all that up. I mean, like he said a couple of times, he got here, he was a 22-year-old kid, and now he's 30, and that's a big chunk of his life that he's worn that 86 and played for this team. I mean, his first catch was in, Michael Vick was his quarterback. I mean, that's how long he's been here. And it's really hard. And I think it all kind of hit home. He's so focused on the next day and the next practice and the next game that I'm sure he's thought a lot about it, but it's possible this is the first time he really kind of opened up about it, and he got really emotional. And, you're talking about $5 million in cap savings. You're talking about a guy who just turned 30, but, had a decline in production this year. We don't know exactly why, but it's not often that you see guys get that emotional. Doc would cry every week. He was the ultimate wearing your heart on your sleeve type of guy. But most of these guys, this is a business, and that's the way they look at it. Not many guys played their whole career for the same team. But he's just such an emotional guy. And my gosh, he started talking about 2016 in the Bengals game, and not how he heard from people, when are you going to be the starter? Because he was playing behind Selleck for a few years, and he kind of just wrapped up his whole career and talked about the frustrations and the triumphs, and at the very end, just talking about his legacy. He started crying. He paused a couple times. Talked about how much he loves playing in a city that's as tough as Philadelphia, that demands excellence all the time. And he said he wishes there were fans at the stadium yesterday, Sunday night, just because he says, I know they would have booed, but it's just been great to have fans there one last time. Emotional, Zach Ertz. I'll tell you what, I think Dallas Goedert's a nice player, but they're going to miss Zach Ertz if he's not here.
Yeah, but where they are as an organization, it's probably the right move. If you take away the emotion from it, and that's what makes this tough. And Howie Roseman talked about being, sometimes he has to be the bad cop. Yeah, sometimes he has to be the bad cop. And you have to make these tough decisions because everyone likes Zach Ertz. He's a great guy and he's done a lot of really good things, but he's an aging veteran who wants a new contract. He's going to get a new contract. He's not going to get what he once would have gotten, but he's going to get a new contract wherever he goes. And it's probably just not wise for the Eagles to invest in another guy over 30, especially when they have someone up and coming at the position. So from a purely football standpoint, yeah, it makes sense to move on from him. It doesn't make it any easier. And maybe they will miss him, maybe he goes elsewhere and he looks like that Pro Bowl player again, and they think, man, maybe we should have kept this guy around. But this is tough. I really don't have a lot of confidence that that's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't really know. He did look a step slower, I thought, this year, but there was so much going on around. Carson missed him. He had a couple drops early. It was just he just never looked good. I think he had one game over 70 yards this year. There were some games, like 1 for 6. He just didn't look like the same player. How much of that is him? How much of it is external factors? It's so hard to tell. I think the one thing that I think of is, if Zach Ertz is too old at 30, you're bringing JP back every year at 38, 39, Deshaun. There's guys a lot older than him who haven't been productive and made a lot of money. But every position is different, and
that's not a reason to.
That's not a reason. No, absolutely. No, when I separate myself from the emotion, and I'm close to Zach, and on a personal level, I hate to see him go, but I think you're right. I think for this organization, it is the right thing to do.
Yeah, and I think today was the realization from him that that's probably what's going to happen. Look, I think if he doesn't get hurt this year, he's probably already gone. I think they probably would have traded him before the deadline. And I think they'll probably try to trade him now. Maybe if they can't trade him, they'll cut him. He'd probably prefer that. Then he can pick where he gets to go. I don't know if they'll give him that chance because, I don't know what he'd bring back, but
people aren't lining up to trade for 30-year-old anythings,
Yeah.
4?
If you get a 4 back, you got to do it.
Yeah, they'll probably get a 4 for him. I think they respect him enough and like him enough to involve him in that. I don't think they would ship him somewhere if he said, look, I really don't want to go there. I don't know that, but I kind of feel like they owe him that.
Well, maybe if it comes down to 2 places, they'd give him a choice.
Yeah. He even talked about coming back here at the end of his career. He's still here. And, he's not a big stats guy, but he knows he's 28 catches short of Harold Carmichael's record of 589. And, when the season started, he was on pace based on his whole career to do it in the Green Bay game. Obviously, he missed, 5 games and ended up 28 catches short. But even with in a bad year, if he had stayed healthy, he probably would have been pretty close. He might have missed it by like 6 catches. But I know that meant something to him. Because I talked to him about it. It's not something he would talk about before it happened, but That's a record that looked untouchable. I mean, nobody's been within 200 catches, until Deshaun over the last, period, like 20 years. So it's something that meant a lot to him. And it's not the reason, obviously, to keep a guy, but it's just, it tells you how much he loves being an Eagle when he starts talking about, whatever happens now, maybe I can come back here at the end of my career and finish as an Eagle.
Yeah, that's tough because he's already trying to figure out a way to come back, and he hasn't even left yet.
Right.
Maybe it happens. Honestly, the Eagles probably need to get away from doing that. But, I mean, maybe they can make him excited. I don't know. It's a tough situation. You got anything else on Zach, or should we move on?
No, I don't think so. You're asking Goddard. Goddard's got to take a big step forward next year. I don't think he did this year. I think he was pretty much the same player. I thought there were some balls he could have fought for, could have caught that he didn't. But he needs to kind of, instead of, he needs to be that 60, 65 catch guy and 700-yard guy, especially if Hurts is the QB and, well, really whoever the QB is, but he's going to become a pretty important guy. So he's got to take a big step.
He does. I mean, but like we talked about on the last pod, I think that if the offensive line is shored up, it'll give him more opportunities to be a receiver again, because I think that is a really important part of his game is the blocking. And I don't want to overlook that because he can make an impact on a game as a run blocker. You know what I mean? The stats don't always tell the story with him.
No, that's true. I think he's a good player. I think he's a good tight end. I still think he's a top tight end in the league. I mean, gosh, Evan Ingram went to the Pro Bowl with numbers are just a little bit better than Goddard. So he would have matched if he played all year. So I think he's a good player. And, and they'll need another tight end. But, who knows? Maybe it's Richard Rodgers who did some good things when he got to play. So
Perk's getting healthy.
What's that?
Perk's getting healthy.
Josh Perkins there. Hakeem Butler's in the mix. Caleb, whatever his name is.
Jason Kroom, touchdown machine.
The Kroomer.
Let's move on to Howie. It was a lengthy press conference, ended up being around a half hour. Not ideal setup with this Zoom deal, but, we try to make the most of it. So he doesn't answer as many questions as he would have in person. It doesn't have flow. We can't kind of grill him on things like we would have in a normal setting. But I think he was asked a lot of really important questions. And it was funny because they put him and Doug up there together, but we had just talked to Doug a few hours earlier, it felt like. So, and we talked to Doug, 3-4 times a week for the entire season. This is our first chance to talk to Howie Roseman since September 5th. So I think all but 2 of the questions went to Howie, and that was to be expected. Overall, before we get into specifics, what did you think of his performance in this presser?
He said the right things. He said he was embarrassed by the season. He acknowledged that they have to draft better. He acknowledged that they stayed old. They clung to the past, clung too long. But that's stuff he said before. He's very good at this, and his quotes look good in print. He tends to ramble a little, but you can whittle him down to But the bottom line is, he's got to do it, and you can't. He says all the right stuff, but then you're done and you're like, well, they still got to draft players, and he's just not that good at it, and he hasn't been that good at it. So, yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what changes. There's always some changes in the front office. He talked about John Dorsey. Gosh, I almost said Ken Dorsey.
Different guy.
I'm sitting here thinking, was it Ken or John? He said all the right stuff, but ultimately, if he keeps drafting the wrong players, it doesn't matter what he says.
Yeah, that's totally right. And that's, I think, that's the tough feeling, I think, for a lot of fans right now is that not much you can really do if it seems like he's impervious to losing his job. It seems like he's Teflon, and so we'll see if he can do any better. He did talk about specifically Carson Wentz and whether or not he'd trade him. He said that's not something we're talking about right now, he said. So we'll see. I mean, this is also
now. They just weren't this morning.
Yeah, I think he publicly said supportive things of Carson Wentz, but in any case, you would need to say supportive things about Carson Wentz. Even if you're trying to trade him, you're not going to tank his trade value in a press conference.
Don't use the word tank. I'm over that. But yeah, you're right. And there's really not much he can say. What's he going to say? Yeah, we're going to try to unload this guy. He was terrible. He doesn't want to be here. He's out of here. Gosh, hopefully we can get a 2 and a 5. I mean, what's he to say? So, ideally, I mean, it's good that they get us Howie Roseman, but ideally the time to talk to him is, in a few months after the wheels start moving and things start happening. Maybe we will. We'll talk to him at the draft, obviously. Yeah. Obviously it's not a healthy situation with Carson and the organization. I think that's clear. There's just only so many things that Howie or Doug can say right now.
Yeah. Any other takeaways from Howie? We asked him in every which way about the draft and his performance. He was asked specifically about Justin Jefferson and Jalen Reagor, and as unfair as it might be to Jalen Reagor to keep doing this, Justin Jefferson just set the rookie receiving record. Jalen Reagor looked okay. He certainly wasn't Justin Jefferson, and the Eagles bucked conventional draft knowledge in April to take the wrong guy. I mean, maybe that'll change over time, and we won't say he was the wrong guy, but it certainly seems like that.
And how he talked about Brandon Graham and how in 2010 everyone thought they took the wrong guy, and they did. I mean, Brandon had a nice career, but they still took the wrong guy. But and he made the point that Jalen, I think he just turned 22. He's a young kid. He's going to get better. Obviously, guys like DK Metcalf and Justin Jefferson have more stable quarterback situations than Jalen Reagor and better quarterbacks. But I wasn't impressed with him. I'm not. I don't know. I'll be at this point. I would never call anyone a bust after 1 year, but I can't imagine he'll ever be better than Justin Jefferson or nearly as good based on what I saw this year. So we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong, but as far as the drafts, and I asked Howie about the young talent on the roster, and I was like, what's your assessment of the guys 26 or 27 or younger? And he's like, well, why'd you pick that number? I'm like, I'm not trying to exclude anyone. You go 28 if you want. Go under 30. You pick the number. I don't know if that came through on the Zoom call. I don't know if I was muted at that point, but
he would have said, no, we'll go 35.
But yeah, I think it's a valid question. And that's when he talked about, the Super Bowl team and how they won with an older line. It's time to move on from that. And that was 4 seasons ago, 3 years ago. So,
well, sometimes Howie acts like 2018, 2019, the Eagles were like cream of the crop in the NFC. I mean, they squeaked into the playoffs both years.
Yeah, and I think it's been a gradual decline that, he'll talk about 3 straight years in the playoffs where on the outside you talk about winning a Super Bowl to winning a playoff game to making the playoffs to going 4-11-1. I mean, that's a pretty steep and consistently downhill arc. It's not an arc. It's you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I
think organizationally maybe this is something they needed to kind of get it through their heads that, this is bad. I mean, this is really bad. They're really bad. They're one of the worst teams in the league. And, to start clinging to, well, we built a Super Bowl team and we did this and we did that last year. And, right now they suck and they've got to come to terms with that.
Yeah. I mean, I think they know it, but I'm not convinced they know how to fix it. And Howie's still being in charge of it all. Honestly, doesn't still instill a lot of confidence. I did want to get to one specific thing he mentioned though, when talking about, I asked him about the draft and everything. And he said, it's a gut punch when you see guys that you did work on go elsewhere and have all this success. And then a little bit later, when he was asked about Reagor and Jefferson, he brought up on his own medicals, which to me, he was talking about DK Metcalf, and maybe that's not fair to put words in his mouth. But that's kind of what I got out of that was some guys aren't on your board because of medicals. Is that the way you took that?
Yeah. Yeah, and he also said how happy he was to see J-Jaw contribute last night. Which
he said they're counting on J-Jaw and Reagor improving over the offseason.
Yeah.
I wouldn't count on J-Jaw. I mean, I guess you have to count on Reagor.
Yeah.
But
J-Jaw's a 23-year-old second-round pick, so it's like, if they're counting on him, then they got bigger problems then, because every time for 2 years that they've counted on him, what's happened? He's let them down. Is he going to really be a different guy in his third year? We'll see.
No, probably not.
But they don't have a whole lot of options. I mean, even if they draft, a receiver at 6, which certainly not a done deal, it's certainly not a slam dunk. They don't have. They don't have any proven wide receivers. I mean, all those guys, Quez, Hightower, Reagor, they had little stretches where they, Fulgham had a big stretch, but none of them had a good year. None of them, I guess Quez for a 6th-round pick is impressive, but none of them, are in the conversation as that's going to be the guy next year. So, J-Jaw is probably going to be in camp. There's no reason not to. But even if he has a good camp, he's done that before and then hasn't produced on game day. Well, we're off topic here, but it just kind of shows you how much work they have to do across the board, but especially a wide receiver.
Yeah. I didn't really have a lot of other takeaways from Howie. It was a half hour, but honestly, not much in there. They kept going back to, it's still so close. It's still so raw. It's, I thought it was interesting when talking about Jalen Hurts. He still talked about the need for a good backup, especially if the league moves to a 17-game season. So we're still talking like Hurts isn't the guy, but that could also be posturing knowing the situation with Wentz.
Yeah. Well, if they trade Carson and Hurts isn't the guy, I guess they could draft a guy at 6. They could, who knows? They could move up to 2. They've done that before.
They have done that before. It's easier to move from 6 to 2 than 13 to 2.
Oh, maybe they could trade Carson to the Vikings for the rights for the rights to Sam Bradford and I don't know, but I don't envy them. I mean, they got themselves into it. Make no mistake about that. But this is a mess. I mean, this whole quarterback thing is a mess that they've got a lot of work to do to sort it out.
They do. We talked to one of the quarterbacks on Monday. Jalen Hurts spoke. Did not talk to Carson Wentz. He declined to speak to reporters. And look, he can do whatever he wants. I'm not personally offended that he didn't talk to reporters today, but there's a pretty notable report out there that says he wants out of Philadelphia, and he had a chance to either say that's true, yeah, I want out of here and try to force his hand, or to refute it, and he chose to not speak, which, look, he's a smart guy. He knows how that's going to come off, and he knows how people are going to take that.
Yeah, and the fact that, and listen, Chris Mortensen, where the report originated, is, I mean, he's not a guy to just throw stuff out there. I mean, he's one of the best in the business, and the fact that nobody in Carson's camp has refuted or denied or questioned, or, there hasn't been a statement, there hasn't been a tweet, there hasn't been an interview, there hasn't been anything even leaked to another media, saying that's not necessarily. I mean, it's been generally, if somebody has an issue with something like that, there's an immediate reaction from the agent or somebody in the Carson camp or whoever the player is. So for Carson to now have a chance himself to sit at a podium and or a table or whatever they use and say, no, that's not the case. Look, it's been a hard year. It's been a frustrating year. I want to be here. This is a team that drafted me. It's not fair to say that he's saying that the report is accurate, but it's certainly a pretty strong indication. It's not 100%. I mean, he might have other reasons for not wanting to talk. I don't know. Maybe he had to get home and change diapers. Who knows? But I think it's a bad look, honestly. And it's like you said, it's not because of me. I don't care personally if he talks or not. But there's a whole lot of fans out there who would love to hear. Is this guy really? Is he for real? He really doesn't want to be here just because he got benched. I mean, people want to know what he's thinking, what's going through his head, and what the truth is. And the fact that nobody has questioned the report or the report the previous week that he didn't want to stay here and be a backup. I mean, to say your relationship with the head coach is fractured, that's pretty strong. It's pretty strong. So to not deny it when you have the chance. I mean, he could have even come in and sat at the table and said, look, guys, I'm not taking any questions, but I just want to say, I want to be here. I want to compete. If there's somebody to compete with in training camp, I'll go out there and compete and try to win the job back. That's it. Happy New Year's. I'll see you guys in the spring. He could have done that. He didn't have to answer questions if he didn't want to, but I think he should have done something. I think it's a bad look.
Yeah, I mean, he has social media accounts too. He has agents that can release statements.
Yep.
He has a team that can release a statement, and he's chosen not to. And look, I really want to be clear. I don't care what he does, but I think it's going to be taken that way. And we've seen from him before, when that Philly Voice story came out a few years ago, he did address it. It was a small group of us, but he addressed it. He answered every question about it. He admitted some fault in that. So there's a history of him responding to negative reports. So it really makes you question why he won't respond to this one.
Yeah. I mean, he's always been out front of stuff. And as a quarterback, there's always going to be stuff swirling around you for any quarterback. Part of that is as a starter during the season, he's required to talk. So sometimes he didn't really have a choice. But he's taken on most things head on. I guess I'm not surprised. I didn't think he would talk, but I am disappointed.
Yeah.
I don't think he's ever going to play here again.
Yeah, I don't either. And I'm surprised we're here, but when there's this much, you just got a feel for this stuff, I mean, when there's this much smoke, there's probably fire, and and maybe the Eagles' mission right now is to try to repair it behind closed doors. And if they really think Carson gives them the best chance, then they have to do that. They have to try to repair it right now. They have to try to figure out a way to bring him back and to make sure the relationship is fine and make sure that he can coexist with Jalen but it feels like there's all these different parts to this, and I don't know how you figure it all out. And even if you do figure it all out, there's no guarantee it works.
I mean, why? I don't. Yeah. I don't get why. I mean, maybe I just have a different mentality, but I mean, wouldn't you want to stay where you live, stay where you are, stay with the team you drafted, and try to win your job back? Is that what you would do?
I'm not going to fault him if he looks at this and thinks, I'm not best served here anymore. Like, if he looks at it and thinks the best move for my career is to go elsewhere, I get what you're saying about competitive nature. But if he really, but they brought back Doug Peterson, right? And if I'm Carson and I look at Doug and think, that guy doesn't get me. I'm supposed to be the franchise quarterback, and the head coach and the play caller doesn't have an understanding of how to make me a good player, and it reflects poorly on me. I don't know if I can necessarily fault him. And I totally get what you're saying about competitive nature. Like, there should be something inside of him that says, no, I'm better than Jalen Hurts. I'm going to win my job back. Right. I'm going to have success here. This is a team that drafted me. They paid me. I want to do it here. And I get that. And it's easy to say that. But if he really feels like the relationship is damaged beyond repair, then maybe it is the best thing for both sides to move on.
Maybe. I mean, I still think he's their best chance of being a playoff team next year. Of course, that's, without knowing who they might add, but maybe he'll trade him to the Colts and the Eagles can sign Phillip Rivers as part of their youth movement. Find schools for his 13 kids.
He's not as old as Brady. That'll be their sell.
That's right. I wonder, Carson and Doug, this wasn't really a storyline until this year. We always felt like Doug had a little bit better feel for Nick. But Carson had a lot of success under Doug, and not just with Reich here. 18 and 19, Carson played well, and Frank was gone, and Doug was calling the plays. And Mike Groh was the offensive coordinator. So I just wonder where it went wrong. If it went wrong, it went wrong during a pandemic. How do you factor that into the whole dynamic? I can't get past the quarterback who finished last year was playing under Doug Peterson. And, how do you get from that to this quickly?
I don't know.
I don't know
how you fix it either.
Not if Doug's here. And maybe if there's, an offensive coordinator who Carson's comfortable with. I don't even know how he would. I don't know. It's such a. How many quarterbacks have been drafted that high and only lasted 5 years as a first or second round pick? There's some, right? Ryan Leaf, I guess. There's some. Tim Couch, maybe, probably.
But none of them were good.
Yeah.
Carson was good.
Yeah. That's true.
Really good.
It's a conundrum. It's so baffling how it went wrong, how it got this ugly. And yeah, maybe the job number one for Howie, Doug, and press, if he's going to be here, and whoever, is let's figure out where it went wrong. Let's have an honest conversation with Carson and see how we can fix this to his liking, so we don't have to do this. They don't want to take on $34 million in dead money for a fourth round pick or second round pick, whatever you got for him. So maybe that's going to be project number one for the offseason. I just don't know. Maybe.
We talked to Jalen Hurts on Monday. I asked him if he would welcome a competition with Carson, and he said, I'm a competitor. And
yeah.
But, what's he going to say there?
Yeah.
So he's in front of the camera and he says it. But the one thing with Hurts I found really interesting, he was asked the question about defenses now having tape on him and then figuring out his game and tendencies. And Hurts had a really interesting comment, basically saying, I don't think they've really seen me yet. Because he's like, we're still trying to figure out our identity with me as the quarterback. And I found that interesting because that sounds like a guy who expects to be the quarterback here next year when he's talking about the identity of the offense with him at QB. And he basically said, like, this offseason, he wants to really figure out how Doug Peterson thinks. He wants to work with him to figure out what offense works best for him. And that's an interesting concept because they didn't really come in with a plan for Hurts. They had to change it on the fly. They had a plan for Wentz. And 12 games in, they thought, oh, crap, Wentz stinks. We got to go to this kid. And they didn't have a full offseason to really prepare for him as the quarterback. It makes you wonder what the offense would look like if they have extended time to plan with Jalen Hurts as the quarterback.
Yeah, I like the fact that he thinks that way. I mean, I think he's just wired to kind of feel that way, to kind of feel like I'm the man, and I liked it about him. I think there's a chance, I mean, if they do trade Carson, I think Jalen showed enough to be certainly in the mix. I don't know who else he'd be in the mix with, who the competition would be with, but if you gave him an offseason and OTAs and preseason games and a solid O-line and upgraded wide receivers, you can have success with him, I think. I don't know I don't know how good he'll be, but I saw enough in those first 3 games, and I kind of throw out yesterday. Just such a ridiculous. Everything was ridiculous. No, I've seen enough to feel like he has a chance to be a quarterback in this league. But beyond that, I just don't know. They might be ready to spend a year finding out. I mean, that might be the plan for 2021. Like, we'll trade Carson. We'll try to get as many weapons as we can for Jalen. The offensive coaches and Jalen will try to get on a proverbial same page, figure out the best offense to tailor to him, and let's go play football. And and then if that doesn't work, now you're back to finding a quarterback for 2022. But if you feel like you've seen enough from Jalen these last 4.5 weeks, 5 weeks. It wouldn't be 4.5 weeks because that would be after the Green Bay game. It would be 4.5 games, maybe 5 weeks. Dave hates me sometimes, but that might be the plan,
Yeah, and it's not even like that could be the plan only if they've seen enough from Hurts. It might have to be the plan because it's an irreparable situation with Carson. And if that's the case, and you don't draft a quarterback in the first round, and you're not going to be able to spend money on one in free agency because you don't have any money, then you're kind of back into this corner where he has to be your quarterback. Yeah, so you better figure it out.
And unless you want to re-sign Sudfeld, there really aren't a lot of options. I mean, any free agent quarterback's going to cost you a fortune. They can't do that. If you draft a guy in the later rounds, it's hard to imagine he's going to be ahead of Hurts. And if Carson's gone, I mean, they don't have anybody on the practice squad. There's not a lot of paths they can take to find a quarterback here.
Exactly, which means even if Hurts is the guy next year, it doesn't mean they're all in on him. Right. It might just mean that was the best option they had at the time.
But, they could also be looking at it like, it's going to be a tough year. It's probably going to be a tough year next year for the Eagles. Let's find out as much as we can about Jalen Hurts and at least, find out if he can be that guy. Because we're going to be losing anyway, so we may as well give him the keys and see what he's got.
What an uplifting message. We're going to be losing anyway.
I mean, it's hard for me to see them being able to put together a roster considering their salary cap issues that could compete for a Super Bowl next year. But 2022, the way, assuming the cap's going to be, I mean, they have a chance to really be out of cap trouble 2022. And they might have another really good draft pick. So I kind of think everything is going to be geared toward 2022 is going to be the takeoff point for the rebuild. And next year is going to be like, let's try to figure out as much as we can.
That might be the case.
Look, there's really no other way for me to say it. You're missing out. If you're not playing this, you're missing out.
It's the free contests on the NBC Sports Predictor app. They've already handed out over $3 million in cash prizes, and there are tens of thousands more up for grabs this and every week. So get in on the action right now with the NBC Sports Predictor app powered by PointsBet.
I sent you a message earlier today feeling bad for Nate Sudfeld because the entire world right now is talking about the Eagles tanking just because he was in the game. I mean, that can't be doing wonders for his confidence right now.
Yeah. Yeah. He's going to be like a punchline the rest of his career.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a shame. But he'll get a job somewhere. Somebody's setting off fireworks. I don't know if you can.
Is that what that is?
Yeah.
Huh.
It's been going on since New Year's.
In your kitchen?
Sounds like it.
It does.
They're actually outside somewhere.
I like that they're still celebrating the New Year 4 days in.
Yeah, maybe they might just be celebrating the end of the Eagles season. I don't know.
I like that the Eagles at the link have been setting off fireworks all year when they score, which they've really saved a lot of money on the firework budget this year, but they're still setting them off. No one's in the stands, but I kind of like it.
I like when there's a Goodyear blimp over a dome. We should mention Mike Garafolo's report about Malik Jackson and Alshon's contracts real quick.
Yeah, sure. Basically, they moved some money around. Those two guys have kind of unique structure in their contract where they would have needed to be, and they might still need to be, post-June 1st cuts. And whenever that happens, you can sometimes save more money, but you have to carry – you can designate a guy as a post-June 1st cut, but you still have to carry that cap space through that date. So it doesn't give you the instant relief, and the Eagles have to be cap compliant whenever the new league year starts. So in whatever date it is, March 16th or so, whenever it is, that's the day they have to be cap compliant. So they apparently made some moves so that they can be cap compliant, still cut both of those guys, which Garafolo says they're going to do, which doesn't surprise either of us. Yeah, but that's the first step in many they're going to have to take this year to figure out this cap situation. And, I mean, they still don't know. There's a cap floor set by the NFL and NFLPA, but we still don't know what the salary cap for next season is going to be. So they're kind of working off projections right now. Right.
Maybe our next pod we can get into Malik Jackson a little bit and kind of explain why neither of us was surprised. Because I know I did a piece on 10 Eagles we can say goodbye to after the game Sunday, and Malik was on there. We were both pretty confident. Maybe we get into that next time.
That sounds good. That's a good tease. If you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, please rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. For Reuben, I'm Dave. Buckle up. It's going to be a wild off season, and we'll be with you the whole way.